right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Hello and welcome everyone to Down the Garden Path, where each week we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice while doing our best to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. Hello there, I'm Joanne Shaw, owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design, and with me is my co-host Matthew Dressing. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Joanne, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Matthew Dressing, owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. As landscape designers and gardeners, we believe it's important and possible to have great gardens, which are sustainable and low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen.
That's right. And tonight, as it's the last day in February, which is amazing, we are wrapping up our February theme of houseplants with an Ask Us Anything episode, where we're answering any of our listeners' wonderful questions. So whether it's about houseplants or anything else, we'd love to hear from you. If you have a question for us, please send it to instudio101@gmail.com. Well, Matt, it's reading week. So Matthew, we have Matthew here for the whole show.
I'm alive, and on time.
That's right. So many of our listeners might realize Matt's been coming in slightly into the show a little bit just for the scheduling conflict that we have. But we're making the best of it. So I hope everybody is understanding. And our guests have been really good at understanding as well. So yeah, and then I was away, so then we acted that we did Dave's air plant, right? It was last week.
That's right.
And that was a good episode. That was one of our most popular shows. And Marianne's wonderful houseplant book that has so inspired me.
Yes. And speaking of houseplants while you were away, I can only imagine, I don't know if you want to share with the listeners where you went, but all the amazing, what would have been houseplants for us.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Being out in the wild for you.
Yes, I was in St. Lucia. So yes, all their gardens were filled with our houseplants, right? So yes, it was tropical plant heaven. And I did think a lot about Marianne's book from our conversation with her before I left. And and just seeing how tough, the plants can survive in those conditions kind of thing, so that they can survive in our climate as well. Obviously not for winter. And so she gives all the instructions on bringing them inside, but the different textures. And I know I was speaking to you and I chatted on the weekend, and I was saying how in many of our gardens, as designers, we try to explain to homeowners, it's not all about the flowers, because things only flower for a certain period of time. That really you have to, especially with lower light areas, you really have to also consider foliage and textures and different shades of green, and like big leaves and skinny leaves, or things like yews that are evergreen and deciduous, and that really gives a garden a lot of interest seasonally. But I know when we think of tropical plants, we just think of flowering plants, right? Bird of paradise, bougainvillea, those types of things. But I really got to see that despite us having that there, I also saw the textures of the different plants. And it really struck me at how, even though they're very different than what we grow in our gardens, it was very similar at the same time.
And so of all these amazing plants, which one jumped out at you the most? Was there one that was just, oh my God, it's so pretty, or oh my gosh, what is that?
Well, there were several like that for sure. And I did, and you're gonna, I tried to, because some of the plants were labeled, they had labels. So when I did see the labels, I did go and photograph the labels. So I don't have that in front of me. I think they're ginger. I think it's a ginger plant. Is it red ginger? Mm-hmm. That has a red flower. I mean, those were quite very interesting and much bigger than what we see here in our homes. But it really made a statement in the garden. So I think there were a lot of different things that really struck me. Same with the shade, like their shade, the things that they had in the shade also had green and white. Like a lot of our shade plants are very are variegated green and white, right? And so we're there. So the tropical plants were variegated green and white. So that was really interesting. And they also had a lot of burgundy. So I kept thinking there was one plant that was quite tall, actually, and it reminded me of nine bark. Like just in the sense, like it wasn't as droopy as our nine bark was, but it had that burgundy similar leaf, but it was much more structured. And so yeah, so that was made for a really interesting hedge. So so I'm hoping to post all that in a blog post in the near future. So stay tuned. But it was a very nice trip, and no complaints. It was nice to kind of get away. So yeah.
We all need a good break, right?
We did, yes, for sure. And it was safe, and everybody was safe there on the island. It was really well done. So so traveling now is a little bit of an adventure, but it was very good. So but it was nice to be surrounded by plants and things too. So it was really
warm
a cool
weather.
thing. Yes, the warm weather. So, but I'm happy to be back. I know we've got listeners tuning in, and hopefully they've got some questions for us from either some of the past shows, right? Since we weren't here to answer them, or anything else about their existing houseplants.
Yes, exactly. So send us your questions. Dawn has already written in and said, "Hey, favorite listener here, welcome back." So thank you, Dawn, for welcoming us back. It does feel like it's been quite a while since we've been able to talk live, for sure.
Yeah, especially together too, right? So that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually have a question for you, because I have this dilemma, which, so, it's, since it's ask us anything, I'm going to ask you.
Oh.
And I might have mentioned on the show before, but I have a very big rubber tree plant, and it's getting, I think, surviving shockingly in my dining room in the north window as I cough. Hold on. I know, sorry, and I didn't even hit the mute button. I'm like, sorry. Anyway, it's gotten really wide, and so it's taking up like a whole corner of the room. So I feel like I need to trim it, but I know it leaks, and I don't think it's as easy as just trimming it, right? So
yeah, is it actively growing, or is it just kind of dormant? Or
shockingly, I mean, at this time of year, no, there's some new leaves on it, and actually, considering it gets very little light, it is actually really happy. But I think that's part of it, is why it's getting wider, right? Is because it's reaching, it is by a north window, but it's still a north window.
Yeah. So the spaces between the leaves are starting to get maybe a little wider than they were originally. Yeah. So she's stretching a bit for sure, reaching for all that nice.
And definitely, like, it's not a single stem, like it's like a multi-stem shrub. Like it's
like a nice big bush. It's not like a standard, but it's like a nice big bush.
Yeah.
So you could do that now if she's actively growing, because she'll actively repair herself. But yes, she will start to drip because they get that kind of sappy, white milky. So just watch if you do that, if those branches are beyond the pot, that you catch it or put a bag
newspaper
down
or something. Okay.
Newspaper, yeah, would be perfect. And then you can just throw it out or recycle it. And then you could do it I wouldn't do it too heavily right now until the days grow longer. If you wanted to do one or two maintenance pruning, like it's kind of sticking out over a chair, it's like in the way of walking, I would do that now down to the next set of buds, kind of like we would do a shrub outside. But then I would wait till we see a lot more of those tips start to activate and become actively growing, and give her a nice little and she should branch up. And then if you give her a little bit more sunlight or a little bit more blue light, she'll start to compact and stay. That internodal space will be a little tighter. She'll be a little bit more dense.
Yes. If it wasn't so big, I think I would love to bring it outside. I mean, it's definitely Marianne inspired me about doing that. I mean,
you could, if you wanted to wait and then give her a nice prune and take her outside and acclimatize her outside and have her nice and big and dense. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, so that might be, it's just heavy, but we'll see if I can convince somebody else to do the heavy lifting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, thank you. So I got the first question, or the first question in of the day. It looks like Frank is here and he says, yay, Matt is back. And Joanne, wish he was with me. So does rock salt for ice hurt lawns? Good
Yeah,
question. Very
yeah,
timely too.
great question. And yeah, it does. If we get too many salts that are out onto the lawn, or all that snow that's shoveled out that has a high salt content, as that breaks down and starts to leach into the soil, the salt will start to draw the moisture away, or draw the moisture towards the salt. So it'll pull it away from the root zone so that the roots can't really get it. And then that'll cause some uh, drought stress, obviously, but also depending on the accumulation of the salts, we can start to see some burning and some physical damage of those roots as well. So yeah, as best you can, try to push your salt to somewhere else beyond, or the away
Mhm.
from your lawn as best you can. Yeah.
Is there anything that we can do, put on the lawn to in early spring to neutralize it?
You could, again, just hopefully that we can start to leach it away, so we can add a lots of water. Hopefully we get some good spring rains that we can dissolve those salts and push them away from the root zones, and that should be help with it a little as well. It depends on how much, Frank, you end up putting it down, how much you
Mhm.
end up putting down, and what you use as well. I mean, if you're using the like actual rock salt or salt sodium, yeah, that'll do more damage than something else, like one of the specialized ice melters. And I was
Yeah.
just trying to think of what their active,
Is it
if it's
magnesium? Is it magnesium?
magnesium or potassium chloride, I think.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
gypsum. Now gypsum, because I know I get a gypsum put down in my garden in the fall as a preventative for some of the salt damage to some of my shrubs and trees and things. And I've seen it just recently. I think it was Matt McFarland was recommending it for his clients from SEP for lawn damage. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I could definitely, yeah.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
I'm saying, look at Matt's face, you guys. Sorry.
No, I was just trying to think of, I'm just thinking, oh, I've never actually heard of doing that instead for the lawn. So no, I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yep,
Well,
I
there
could
you go.
definitely see that. But there
Yeah,
we go.
Matt, for everybody, Matt McFarland is another landscape designer who's been on our show in the past, and I happened to just see that same comment on Twitter that he responded to. So, and it made me think about it because I thought, well, I'm using it as a preventative, like my arborist puts it down as a preventative. So it was interesting that he was suggesting people, because it can be sometimes hard to find later in the season. So he said,
Yes.
buy it now so that you have it ready when you need to use it. So that's
Yeah, and the
something you can
gypsum
look
would help
into, Frank.
for sure. Yeah, that would help dislodge the sodium, um, and allow it to leach a lot easier as well. So yeah, that makes sense. Very neat. I live in a condo as well, so
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with it.
Well,
No.
but no, but you do have all the experience at the garden center with all the
Yes.
chemicals and stuff. But yes, Nat doesn't have rock salt issues at his front lawn, right?
No.
So there you go. Goodness gracious. So yeah. Um,
So
Sadie
um,
has written in.
I was just gonna say, yes, Sadie has written in, and hello to you. It says, Sadie, past shows posted anywhere. Thank you. And yeah, Sadie, you can definitely check out if you Google down or search down the Garden Path podcast on your favorite podcast provider. We are releasing every episode every week, usually every Tuesday, Wednesday. You'll see the Monday's episode go live. So you can find us there on Google Podcasts or wherever else you like to download your podcast. And thank you for tuning in live this evening. And you can also find them on both of our websites. You can find Joanne at www down the number 2 earth.ca. And you can find myself at naturalaffinity.ca. So yeah, if you just Google down the Garden Path podcast. We've got lots of wonderful episodes there for you to explore and enjoy. So thank you for the question, Sadie.
Yeah. and Jim, and I can't believe I coughed that way. So we know that Joanne was smoking on her vacation with that cough. Yeah, I'm so sorry. It was caught me so off guard. I couldn't hit the mute button. But Amarilla's question. So I have a bunch of these myself. So after that beautiful flower blooms and dies off, what do I need to do to the plant? Thank you. That's a great question.
An excellent question. You were saying you have some, so I wasn't sure if you were going to jump in there or not.
No, I mean, I haven't been successful, so I'd love to hear what I've tried a few different things. So what do you recommend?
Yeah, the way I usually treat mine is I treat it just like any other regular house plant. So if I've got it in soil, I'm still watering it. I've let it do its flower. As it starts to die back or yellow, I'll cut the stalk out, and then I will keep it in a bright, indirect or medium direct light where I can keep it evenly moist and it can still continue to give me leaves. And I'll do so until it'll start to draw back all of the food back from the leaves into the bulb, which I've had to do it as early as like March, but I've also had it run all the way through the season. And in which case, I usually treat it as a shade plant outside. So I'll give it a bright, indirect, or shady location. And then usually she'll start to lose her leaves or draw back as we start to see some coolness. So end of September, early October, I'll cut those leaves back. I'll be feeding her as well, I should say, with something with a little bit more of a high phosphorus number as well, just for her to help build that new bulb. So I'll do something with a phosphorus and a potassium number. And then what I'll do is as it yellows down, I'll just dig it up, keep it in a dark, cool location. And then usually around December, depending on the timing and how the year went and how cool it was, like this fall was a much warmer fall. What I'll do is I'll just bring it inside. And after about 2 months, she'll usually start to leaf out again. And then I'll just treat her as an indoor houseplant. And you could leave the amaryllis in a pot if you already have it, or you could plant it right out into the garden if you wanted. Just remember too, when you bring it inside, and Marianne talked about this in her bringing in houseplants, part of our houseplants and how to love them. Her look at her book is just making sure that we're watching for those insects and other pests. Being outside, they're going to migrate in and investigate. So you might find someone hiding in your new soil if you plant it out, or in your pot if you bring it in. So that's all I've ever done. And
you get it to rebloom, like you've gotten it to rebloom by doing that. Okay. So my next question is, do we have to bring it outside, or is there a way to keep it inside?
Yeah, if you've got the space, you can just keep it like a tropical foliage houseplant, very grass-like. And then just again keeping those warm temperatures and that bright indirect light, and she's good to go.
Okay. And when should we start feeding them? Like now, or wait till a little bit more in the summer? Like if they're in a pot now and they finish flowering, but yes, I've got lots of leaves.
Yeah, I usually do a half strength before we get into like May. I'll usually do like a half strength 10, 15, 10, just a nice balanced fertilizer with a little bit of phosphorus and potassium in there. And then from about Easter to about Thanksgiving, that's where I'll give them that full strength water soluble every 2 weeks. A little bit of that 10, 15, 10, or like a 6, 12, 18, something with that higher potassium and phosphorus, just like let her to root and fatten up all those bulbs, those modified leaves, and start to build that flower for
her. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, it is such an achievement to get them to rebloom. So I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree completely, especially if you find that they're still fat and firm after they've bloomed and they're kind of green. They haven't really shrank too much. They should shrink a little bit. But if they're still nice and fat and firm, you've got a lot of that stored energy. It was a place when I worked in Toronto, I was given one as a gift, and I was so bad with it. I had potted it, or I had it in the box in a little pot. I didn't even give it soil, and I just sat it in its little 6-inch pot. She leafed and she bloomed, and she was amazing. And then we were reorganizing the house, so I put her into the other room. She completely died. I didn't cut anything back. And by the middle of November to the end of November, she was flowering a second time, and I literally
did nothing.
Did no water. She was maybe in the right light, and she popped, but she was really fat and still healthy as she went. So she's just a good quality bulb.
That it just cracks me up, right? When there's so many things. I often think
Yeah.
about that with cedars, right? I've got clients who like babysit their cedars, like water them and fertilize them and trim them and stake them and screen them and burlap them and all this stuff, and they struggle. And other people who plant them and just like go to the cottage and they do great. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. So that's nature for us, right? It it doesn't always cooperate, but
That's it.
yeah, I mean, I didn't bring mine. I kept mine. I didn't get mine to successfully rebloom. I certainly got lots of leaves, and I didn't bring them outside, but I put them in the basement. And so yeah, so I think they need a little bit more. I think I might have put them in the basement too soon, and if I keep them now by a window, and get a bit more light and fertilize. I did not fertilize, so yeah. So yeah, it's cool when you have a few, because now I can test it out, right? I can test them out a little bit, do a little bit of experimenting. But like you, I get busy and then forget about it, right? So
Yeah. Yes.
you
This
know.
plant's got to be
So,
tough.
yeah. So if any of our listeners have tricks and tips for how they've kept their amaryllis going from season to season, we'd love to hear about it, right?
Yes, we love those stories. Just like you were saying with the cedars, right? People
Hmm.
baby them and then people do nothing with them, and it's always
Yeah.
fun hearing those
Yeah,
funny stories.
yeah, for sure. So Hannah's written in also in our lovely February Ask Us Anything episode. She says she already sees that the home improvement stores have their spring fertilizer out. As soon as the snow melts, what is the earliest time to put this down on our lawns? Thanks.
Yeah. You know what? I always hear this story in my head about how well, I heard it way back when, but Mark Cullen would go out and seed and fertilize on the snow and just let it, melt down and let it do its thing. So yeah, as soon as you can get out there, I like to say once we start to see some of the other small warmer grass, like some of the grasses or weeds, just starting to grow in start to green, but also grow in some of the cracks or those little microclimates where you start to see, the grass on the edge of a wall starts to green up. Things are getting enough heat energy that they're probably starting to activate in their roots for sure. If they're not actively growing above, they might still look dormant compared to that weed, but things are going to be starting to feed and grow and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
usually, depending on Hannah, where you are, I usually say about March to mid March, depending on the weather, or early April. It totally depends on that spring. If we get a really
Yeah.
icy March or it's still super cold and the ground is frozen, there's still nothing going to be really absorbed, whether the snow is gone there or not. So I like to look for a few signs of life to start first. And then I know usually the roots are starting to activate in our area, and you can put it down and let it start to soak in and give them a feed. The other
Hmm.
thing is with the spring fertilizer is I consider our spring fertilizer for the May growth. So when we start to see um, the green growth out in the spring, usually April or May, when our lawn is greened and started to grow up to about 2 inches long, we know that they're actively growing. They're going to be growing so fast in the cooler weather. They're going to be looking for that higher nitrogen that they're looking for. And then hopefully with our winter fertilizing that happens at the end of November, you've still already got some nice high potassium or high phosphorus fertilizer that's already melted into your soil and into the root zone with your grass, so that when we do get that activation point where the roots start to warm up and we start to see some of those weeds and other things activate, they're already starting to draw in the food you left them last winter as well.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
I think so, when you were saying about the weather, I think also the amount of snow we've gotten this year too, I think is a little bit of a factor, Hannah, into just holding off a bit. Because I feel like if you
Yeah.
did too much, too soon, and on top, I think then once we get rain, the spring rains and stuff, I think you really worry as much as you want to be ahead of the game. I feel like the runoff and the rains are just going to wash it away. And so you're just wasting it. So I don't know. I feel like holding off a little bit. And yeah, I don't know, because like you said, they're not actively, grass isn't going to start actively growing for a while,
Mhm.
so that's something to think about.
Yeah, and like you said with the snow, even if like the snow is gone and the ground is still frozen. You've got all that rain and that precipitation coming. They can't penetrate the ground, but all those soluble salts start to get released and dissolved, and they move in the runoff. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I like that winter fertilizer. Kind of takes you right through that space, and your plants still wake up with a half of a meal there from last year. And once we start growing, we can drop into
Yeah.
our high nitrogen for sure, or our typical
That's
fertilizer, whichever you like to use.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great question. So, so
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I think, and same, what we often say, even with the grass seed questions and stuff like that, that it's, we get impatient for gardening, but, or for getting out into the yard. But really, I think, depending, it also depends on the quality of your lawn too, because if there's a lot of
Mm,
walking on it and things like that, then you're compressing everything. So it's contributing to that runoff. So, yeah,
yes.
very
I'm
good.
going to let you look at that next question. Well, I jump in at the bottom of the hour, making up for some lost time as I've been joining the show, usually about right now. But I'd like to stop and say thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Reality Radio 101. I'm Matthew Dressing, here with my co host, Joanne Shaw, and you're listening to Down the Garden Path. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting and relevant topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from our research and from the guests that join us here on the show. Don't forget, you can spend more time with us down the garden path. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Our handle there is at Down the Garden Path Podcast. You can also find us on your favorite podcast provider. And while you're there, please hit that subscribe button to be notified of new content. And please don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment. We love hearing from all of our listeners. And that's one of the things we really love about doing this Ask Us Anything, or our
Mhm.
question and answers. We really like enjoy hearing from you guys, interacting with you guys, answering your questions, seeing what's on your mind as well. So you can always write us here at instudio101 at gmail.com. Gary, our wonderful producer, always forwards the mail. You can also find us via our websites. Again, you can find Joanne at www.down2earth.ca, and you can find myself at www.naturalaffinity.ca. And I think for the first time, we want to start advertising as well. We have another email address that we can be putting out there for you as well. It is down the garden path podcast at hotmail.com. So again, down the garden path podcast at hotmail.com. You can also send us a message there if you don't want to send one and say hello to Gary and have him forward. You can also reach us directly there as well.
Mhm. That's right. And thank you for letting me. We were going to talk about this today anyway, weren't we?
And we were, and I thought it was a
We
perfect
were, we
segue.
were. So Joe is asking us about, is the book coming out soon? I have spring birthday gifts to purchase. Thank you. Well, good to hear, Joe. We are putting on the last, I mean, we're there, we're almost there. We're almost at the finish line, but our goal is certainly the end of March. We obviously want to get it out. We tried to get it out before Christmas, which was like hilarious that we even thought we could do that. So now that we've done it, we've gone through it, we're like, wow, now we know why it takes people so long, right? So yes, we're really aiming to have something that you can purchase by the end of the month. So end of March, right?
Yes, we're putting on some final details and some revisions. We have so much information that we
Yeah.
love bringing you and sharing with you that we honestly just want to make sure that it's complete and that you are getting the best of us, which we try to bring to you guys every single show. So we just wanted to make sure that it was all there for you, but we will have it by the end of the month. I think we just have a couple months just to
Yeah,
quickly
if
review for the
all
last
goes
time.
well. Yeah. I mean, lots of editing. There's so much editing and there's so much, we're really going through it and making sure it breaks everything down as straightforward as possible. So yeah. So it's definitely been a fun but challenging, thing to do. So which we knew it would be. But yeah, so thank you everybody for your patience and your support, and we can't wait. Hopefully every week we'll have a bit of an update for you.
Yes. And looking ahead at what we might be doing in March, we might have to just have a book release episode. So I'm sure we'll have some giveaways and some other exciting things
Hmm.
around that time too. So
Yeah,
yes, thank you for keeping us on our toes and asking those questions.
definitely, definitely. So, I wonder how many people have started seeds. That is, I know it's a house, but we were kind of talking about house plants, but wonder if there's any listeners who've started any veggie seeds inside. Matt, have you started anything?
You know what? Last year I ended up starting like early. Right about now, I was doing some tomatoes and like they were 14 inches before I could blink. And
Yeah.
I just couldn't handle them. I ended up planting them and they were perfectly fine. They weren't just perfectly straight because I didn't get them staked and whatever. And in the seed trays, they started to kind of bend and fall over while they were doing their thing, but they still would grow. But it was a little bit of a some maintenance to kind of keep them growing and potting them up and making sure I had enough light that they didn't get kind of funky before I could put them out. So no, I
Hmm.
have not, but I am still ordering seeds. Julia DeMacos was on the show 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago now, I think, just at the beginning of February or end of January. And she reminded me about the pink um, marigolds, the strawberry
Oh,
blonde
did you buy some
marigolds.
of those?
Yes, I was meaning to buy them from the last time in November
Yes.
when she talked about them. So I said,
Okay.
I got to pick myself up a couple of these. So I'm looking forward to starting those, and they can be started a little earlier and be
Okay.
kept compact and in a window. So I think I'm going to just kind of play with those as my seeds, and I've got
Hmm.
lots of other fruits and veggies on the way. So
Same. I think after Julia's visit at the end of January, I was like, I got on the like websites and I started putting stuff in my cart, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going away for 2 weeks. So really, that was not such a good idea, and it was too early. So we did have some success. She had recommended the sugar baby, I believe, the small watermelon that we did grow, and we had it climb up. It was very cool because it was small, and we had it. My son planted it. We started from seed, and we grew them on chains on our fence so that they grew up, and end up putting like a little bit of a stocking, like something to kind of, when it got bigger and bigger, it was incredible. They like grew in front of your eyes, but still not, a huge size. They just weren't seedless. So, so when we've been spoiled, first
oh,
world problems, we've been spoiled with growing up with seedless watermelon. So now you plant your own, and it's full of seeds. So I asked Dylan, and he's like, I don't know. I mean, it had so many seeds in it, and we didn't get our timing perfect either with knowing when it was ripe. So it was always just a little under ripe. But I did research some cantaloupes that I thought, okay, well, we'll try that, because at least the
mm,
seeds are all in that center, right? So, but you can't just order one package of seeds from somebody. Like, then you start getting on the site and you start adding all these things, and then it was like, okay, so I stopped. But I know I'm looking forward to Julia's on the show next week, and we're going to really talk specifically about herbs, because that is one thing
mm.
that many of us can do and bring in the house and kind of maintain, and anybody who likes to cook with herbs, and herbs are great for pollinators. There's lots of things. So I'm really looking forward to our show next week with Julia.
She's going to make me want to start growing herbs and other
I
things
know.
that I don't have room for on the balcony.
I
And
know.
I'm listening to you talk about putting seeds in, and I'm just thinking, my catalog in my total in my cart checkout right now is like $72.
Oh, God.
So that's
Yeah, that's
all I need, Julia's.
yeah. I know. I know. It's great, and you're doing it all on your balcony. So yes, yes.
Luckily,
Have
I
you
have
not
family
like
with
asked your
me.
landlord, like, is there not a little garden plot or
Yeah,
someplace where you could go and start growing stuff? Just don't even ask. Like, just put them in.
just start growing.
Just growing.
Oh, that would be
Ask for
awesome.
my whole ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
True. I don't know how I got there. I'm so
I
sorry.
know. I know.
Oh,
Oh, goodness
too
gracious.
fun.
Yes.
Speaking
Yeah.
about planting things in places, Karen has written in, hello. I want to plant a red maple in my yard this year. I live just outside of Toronto, What is the earliest I can do so? Theoretically, you can do it, Karen, as soon as you can dig the hole deep enough to properly plant it, and you can find a red maple to buy of the size and what you want, because she'll wake up and she'll start to expand out into the thawed soil, and she'll grow. But yeah, as long as you can find one, and you can dig the hole, I would go for it. It just depends on how big you want it and what size you want. Do you need it balled and burlap? Do you need some people to help you dig the hole or install it with a landscaper, or is it something containerized you can easily do yourself? Again, so yeah, so it's just take a look for your local garden center. Right now is almost the time, usually about mid to end of March is when we're going to start to see plant materials, some dormant stuff show up, but also garden centers by now know also what they are ordering or have coming in from places if they haven't already if they've already done their order, sorry. So you should be able to call your favorite independent garden center and see what sizes and prices and start to plan for them. And then they may also be able to put it on hold for you and have you come in and purchase it and pick it up whenever you're ready. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes.
If I missed something, Karen, please, yes, just write back in, and we'd love to help you answer your questions. I'm starting to get tongue-tied on this Monday evening.
I know. Do we want to clarify whether we want a native red maple as opposed to a Crimson King maple?
Excellent.
So that's
yes.
something to definitely think about. And boy, this tickle in my throat does not want to go away. But yeah, that is something to think about. That actually the Crimson King one, which we often refer to as red maple, really is an invasive invasive plant, invasive tree, variety of the Norway maple. So that's something to you can read up on that to see if that's the one you're thinking of, Karen, or whether you want one that's going to go green all year and then goes bright red in the fall, which is more of the native Acer, right? Acer rubrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Norway is the one, just maybe for people who don't know those trees. Yeah. The Norway red maple that a lot of people like to call it is the big classic maple leaf looking leaf with that burgundy, but the actual red maple by botanic name as well as common name is actually a green leaf that goes that bright blazing red, and it's a North American native tree. So yeah, yes, excellent. I usually catch that. Thank you.
No problem. That is fine. That's fine. I know everybody is keen, right? And taking care of their house plants. I know my orchids have all stopped flowering. I soaked them today, my little baby orchids. And my son did a good job of looking after my air plants. I have a couple of air plants based on like last week's show. I'd love to know if there's any other listeners who ordered some of these cool and funky air plants. It is pretty easy. You know what? I think it's almost easier to like just drop them in a sink for water for half an hour than it is to remember to give them water and how much water do they need and that kind of thing. And so there, yeah, it's been pretty straightforward. And this one that looks more like it's a tiny one that looks more like a fuzzy caterpillar. I haven't gotten I don't know what to put it in yet, so I kind of still have it in like a shot glass. So it's not the most decorative arrangement, but I'm still working that out. But I have to say, and I know being away kind of inspired me with my houseplants. And I've also been really lucky with the hibiscus. I brought in my mother-in-law's hibiscus that she kept out on her patio balcony, her apartment balcony all summer, and it's done pretty well. So yeah.
Very nice. Right. Growing into the world of houseplants, she is right in front of our eyes. That's awesome. Yeah, I'd like to know too if anybody picked up any houseplants or air plants from David Lynn and Dave's Air Plant Corner for sure. And I always found the same thing when I had my aquarium running and I had house plants. I would just let them float in the top of the aquarium and suck up some of the nutrients in the water, and yeah, let them do their thing.
That's a good idea. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Now, do you have an aquarium?
No aquarium, but that's okay. So, And so we've got another question. This is a good one from Ralph. They're all good. So I don't know why I say that every time, don't I?
Yeah, they're all
He
really
says,
good questions.
hello, I was talking to a bunch of friends of mine about starting a community garden here in Scarborough, Ontario. Do you know of any references that we should talk to about this? I would really like to do it. Thank you. Very interesting question.
Ooh, the first people that I think about were the people who I were doing the community garden last year with.
Hmm.
Was the Whitby Ajax Garden Project.
Okay.
I might have said that it might have been Ajax Whitby Garden Project, but they were able to procure some land, and they're growing things for themselves, but also for the community at large. They grow some plots that also you grow food in for to donate back to the local food bank and the local um, other places like that that take care of the
Mm,
community as well, not just as like you're growing your own food for yourself.
yeah.
So yeah, so I would maybe start there, and your local garden club as well might know or have a couple
Yeah, yeah,
under your
Ralph, the
belt as well.
Scarborough, there's a couple of them, but there's Scarborough Horticultural Society might be a place to start as well. Yeah, because we're both in Durham region, we kind of know a few in Durham region. So if
Mm,
you want to do something bigger scale, if you wanted something smaller, then I would think of finding somebody that might have, like, even if they have a commercial space, but have some green, like, green property that so prevents them from having to worry about watering grass or cutting grass, and just say, maybe reach out to them and say, can we turn this into, a community garden? So that could be but I know it's kind of like a needle in a haystack finding a perfect spot from that standpoint.
yes, yeah, that can be a little um, challenging for sure, most certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, and there must be some existing too. So I was just searching for Ajax, Whitby, uh, yeah, Whitby Ajax Garden Project. So that's something, we'll put it in our show notes, Ralph. But the website says right now it's plantingthefuture.ca. So maybe check that website out and see if there's something you can kind of piggyback on them and to start something more locally to you.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's a good
Thank you
bet.
very much for the question.
Yeah, you had a good time. Like last year, do you think you would do that again? I know school has kept you really busy, but the plot that you had last year.
Yeah, I would definitely do it again. It's so much fun just being out there with the community garden and the different gardeners and their different things that they're growing and their different ideas. It's really a lot of fun to see watch all these different plants get to grow and how everybody enjoys doing their own thing and what they're going to do with it. And there's just so many interesting avenues and great people to meet out there and talk with and grow with. So for sure, if I
Mhm.
had the chance, I would definitely do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're gonna having lots of fun planting at the school and teaching the kids how to what are the courses? I don't know if you want to tell our listeners a little bit about what you're, because he's not only teaching at college, he's teaching about plants at college to the new generation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my courses is annuals and herbaceous perennials for historic and contemporary gardens. So, if you have not looked at or heard of Parkwood Estates here in the Durham region, it's one of Canada's oldest remaining estate manors around. We get to be on those grounds and we get to learn about the different annuals and herbaceous perennials, as the title says, about how to use them and how Parkwood is using them and some of those varieties, and just kind of learn about annuals and perennials and growing and their situations and their uses, how to use them in design, etc. And then the other ones we're talking about growing, so nursery operations and greenhouse and production and indoor house plants. So how to grow
Okay.
those, propagate those, set up production schedules. We look at light and irrigation and heat and temperature and how all those factors play, and then moving out into from a growing operation as well as into the wholesale and resale operation for nursery. So a nice broad spectrum, a
Yes.
nice good look at the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. So with the parkwood and with the herbaceous perennials and annuals, are you like saving seeds from, like, are you regrow, like, using seeds from last year's plants? to make new plants, or?
They do get to do a little bit of that seed collecting.
Okay.
Parkwood does have some of the standards because they are trying to keep the gardens just as so down to about 1937 era.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they're always planting and collecting seeds and taking
Yeah.
cuttings of their own for their own greenhouse. So we get to see a little bit of that and talk with the head grower there. But we don't get to be as involved as we might like. So we do get to go
Okay.
pop over to the college and do a little bit of fun stuff there where it's a little bit more sensitive and controlled sometimes at Parkwood. So
Right, definitely. But that is interesting to know that they are trying to keep the plant, so they're not, no new proven winner, from 2022 is going to be found in their gardens, right?
yeah, they
they're
are
sure.
trying to keep it like as close to the original heirloom plant as they
Mm,
possibly can.
very
Yeah.
interesting. Good.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Okay.
So I think we've got a couple or a few more questions that have popped in. Don Smith has written in and says, "Hello, this is so exciting to hear about your book. Can't wait. I was wondering about that piece."
And Charlie's written in, "Hi, Matt and Joanne. Great information tonight. It gets us excited about spring and gardening. That's what we're
Yes.
trying to do." So, but there's still a long way. We still got so many months yet before we can get out there. So we want to keep bringing you some great topics and information. And if you have any feedback for us too about as we're continuing to build our show schedule, if there's something you want to learn more about, we would love to hear from you about that. So, right?
Exactly. And we have one other question from Mike. Mike has also written in, "My kids saw a seed package of giant pumpkins at the store the other day, and I can already picture it right here in my head, Mike. Uh, and they want to grow them for this coming year's Halloween. Any tips on advice on how to do this properly? How soon can we put the seed in the ground? And then do you need a lot of room? What about fertilizer? Thanks so much for your advice." So
Mhm.
definitely starting with the seed, take a look at the seed package and it will tell you when you want to start it according to your average last frost date, wherever you are, Mike. So for us, it's here in the GTA. It's usually around the May 24 weekend, although with zones changing, some people it's getting a little closer to about May 9th-ish. But always look at the back of that seed package to see where you can start it or it's safe to put back outside. It'll also tell you how soon you can start it inside so the kids can watch they start to grow inside, and then that'll give you as well again that time to put it out. So once the danger of frost is all gone, she will survive. Watch those cool nights. You may need to protect it with a cloche or some sort of covering if we get a random dip. So that's how soon you can put the seed out in the ground. Do you need a lot of room? You do want to give it as
I was going to
much
say,
room as you
Mike.
can.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, the word giant. Yeah.
You,
Right?
yeah,
The key word there is giant, Mike. So I guess it depends on the size. Um, Matt, you can also start some right direct seeding, right? So you can start some
yes.
ahead of time and then, some backup ones if you want to try them in the garden. But yeah, some of them can get pretty big.
Yeah, some of them are very large, like 2.5 to 3 feet tall and just as wide or as
Yeah.
round for sure. So you do want to give them some good room to grow. I would give them at least a 10 by 10 area with some good, um, rich organic soil. They are going to be heavy feeders to feed in there. I know you can find some recipes because there is a huge competition out there for growing large pumpkins. There's a whole subculture of growing the largest pumpkin. So there's some pretty
Mhm.
neat recipes, some, you know, 2 pounds nitrogen, 3 pounds phosphorus, 1 pound potassium or something like
Yeah.
that per 1,000 square meters. So for that, if it the seed package doesn't say, I would find something just for some fruit and vegetable, again, with a higher phosphorus or potassium and a decent nitrogen, or I would look something specific up for that cultivar that you ended up, or that heirloom that you end up growing, and then
Mhm.
follow that fertilization recommendation for the rest of the season. Yeah, and hopefully you guys have some amazing pumpkins.
Yeah,
You'll have to
yeah.
write us in October and let us know how it went and what you ended up doing with them. How big they
Yes,
grew.
we need to have a pumpkin show, because I know when I've gone for our book from the materials, like we've kind of gone through and looked at like past questions and make sure we're covering things that people asked over the years. And it's actually shocking at how many times people have asked questions throughout the seasons about pumpkins. And that's just something we never, and that just kind of reminded me too. It would be interesting. And then you could kind of partner with Ralph with your community garden to growing pumpkins.
Yes.
So I think that would be good. But even, I mean, it doesn't even have to be the giant ones. Like I think even just regular, like good size pumpkins could still be a fun thing for kids to watch to grow.
I agree. And then the last thing I remember too, just with Mike for any of the tips, is if you're gonna just grow one, that's it's gonna be hard to do. But lots of pumpkins also like to have a little bit of a roll downhill, so they like a little bit of a grade as well to kind of
Ah,
spill over. They don't like to be perfectly flat or in like a valley. Yeah.
right, right. Because yes, the what that's when you get the rotting, right? They need to be, yeah,
Yeah, lets it drain
yeah.
off the surface and lets them ramble a bit. Yeah.
We're going to need to find us a pumpkin farmer so we can do an episode on pumpkins. So there we go.
I've already made the note.
Okay. Oh, good. Good. There you go. Oh, that's good. And I know Donna has said welcome back. She loved the last 2 weeks of shows, but she loves us live too. So yes, we like being live as well. We love the feature of being able to do a pre-record if we need to, but it is fun here getting your live questions.
It is indeed. And I can't believe it's already flown by. We're at 53.
Oh,
We've only
yeah.
got a handful of minutes left.
Okay.
I don't see any other last questions if anybody has any left.
I see a couple there. So I know the feed's
Sorry.
coming through a little weird today, but Shane has written in about garden ponds. So he said you had a gentleman on your show a while back about garden ponds. Can you tell me his name or company? So I believe that was Ernest with Aquascape. So he actually works for the pond manufacturing company, and we love him, don't we? We've had so many great shows with him.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Ernest Williams with Aquascape, and their website there is aquascapeinc.com. And yeah, you should be able to contact Ernest if you're in the GTA. He services a bunch of people there, but they have an amazing website. They have a great YouTube channel. And then, as you said, Joanne, too, we have definitely at least 3 shows, I think, with Ernest talking about ponds and calculating and adding fish and answering a lot of great pond questions for sure.
That's right. But if you are looking for an actual person to install a water feature for you, depending where you are, Shane, you can drop us an email, and Matt and I can connect you to somebody as well, if you're looking for that. So I know of, in the GTA, some Durham people and someone in the West End that I can connect you to. If you're in another province, that I can't help you, but but then that's where Ernest probably can, right, and connect you to contractors in your area. So
yes, because Aquascape is a
Canadian
and American-wide company. So yeah, they've got a good range.
Yes. That's right. And I love this message from Tommy. Thank you so much, Tommy. Did you see this one, Matt? He just wanted to say hi, to say that he really looks forward to the gardening season this year. My family and I have listened to you for many years, and we have taken so much of your advice to make our garden look great and produce some fantastic vegetables. Thanks for all of the advice. Tommy from Youngstown, Alberta. So thank you very much for listening, and shout out to Youngstown, Alberta.
Oh, thank you, Tommy. Thank you so much for listening all those years. I'm sure long before even I started. So that's awesome. Did you have another question there? No, okay. So I think we plugged in last week or next week as well. We have Julia DeMacos returning next week, and we're going to talk all about herbs. And I'm sure you're gathering some questions for her wonderful herbs. Don't forget to check out Julia DeMacos at juliademacos.com if you're starting seeds and you're looking to plan out your vegetable garden, maybe like Tommy was doing, maybe with a little bit more help from another expert. But we've got Julia just recently released her latest ebook, how to start vegetables or plan your vegetable garden. I'm going to be so bad, and I apologize, Julie, if you ever end up listening to this part of the show that I'm missing the title of your book. But she just has a brand new how to start your vegetable garden. So take a look at that as well. What do we have in the next couple of weeks as well? I think we're going to start to talk about growing food inside and continue to grow through March. So we are looking, I believe we have a guest coming up about microgreens.
We do, yes. I mean, that's been something that we've been looking forward to have someone speak about growing microgreens. So I'm excited to have Larissa with us in March from littleleaffarm.ca. So it's a microgreens farm. So we're looking to learn all about that in the month of March. So we've got lots of great ideas for growing food and starting it and edibles in your garden, that kind of thing for the month of March.
That's right. And then I'm sure you'll all be staying tuned for the month of April while we take a look at all of the different garden pests that may attack your garden. So we'll have a few guests to talk about maintaining and keeping those plants pest free. And we'll take a look at some of those common weeds and insects and help you get a jump start and identify those as they approach your garden. So lots of great topics yet to come.
That's right. And I do want to say it again, if you're just tuned in, we want to hear from you. What plants do you want to learn more about how to grow them? What topics are you interested in? We would definitely, we've been doing this a long time and we know what we want to talk about, but we want to know what else we can do to help you. So love we would really love some feedback there. And as we kind of continue to fill in our schedule, whether Matt and I could speak to it or whether we need to call in an expert, we're happy to do that. So yeah, we'd love to listen. We'd love to hear from you, right?
That's right. That is right. Let us know what you want to hear, not just what we want to talk about.
That's right. So that's good. And we are looking forward to Julia next week. And Matt, you're going to try and join us after your class.
I am indeed. But until then, I think that brings us to the end of another episode of Down the Garden Path here on Reality Radio 101. So again, thank you to all of our wonderful listeners. Whether you're listening live to us this evening or you're somewhere comfortable or on the way in the car listening to the podcast, we appreciate every one of you. Thanks again, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing right here on Reality Radio 101.